Hey coders, Darren here, kicking off a new series called How They Made It. In this series, we're going to be picking individual features from the games that you love and implementing them with some game engine. Admittedly, that will mostly be with Unity 3D, but that could change in the future. Today, we're going to be making the health bar found in Zelda. So our implementation will include a set of hearts indicating maximum health, and the hearts will be depleted in chunks. So we're going to have full control over the chunk size, shape, and count from each heart, and whether you want the hearts to each have 4 pieces or 10, be compounded by circular chunks or horizontal, it's going to be as easy as tweaking a few values. So I'm going to start off by bringing in a few art assets that I already have. I got these off of flaticon.com. I'll share that link in the description. Now these art assets, I want to just have them generate mid-map so they look a little bit nicer. And then I will set those to max size 512 because that is the actual size of those images. Now I want to go ahead and create my scene, so I'll go to create, or actually what I can do is come up to file and save scene, and I'm just going to call this test, just in case I need to save my work or come back to the project. I'll know that I'll have my scene set up for me already. I won't lose any work. I'm going to create a UI image, and that's going to automatically create a canvas for me. So my canvas settings here, I want to make sure that I am scaling with screen size and that I am expanding. This is just a common scaler setup that I use so that my images look nice on all resolutions. Okay, now this is my background, so I'll go ahead and click here, hold Alt and Shift to make sure that background stays the size, stays the size of my screen like that. I'm going to make that a black background. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and start adding my hearts. So my heart is going to be a background heart, an outline heart, and then the actual fill of that heart. So it's going to look something like this. First, the background. So I'll have the background heart, and that will just be this icon right here. And I'm going to call this heart 1. And then as a child of that, so I'm going to create another UI image. And I'm going to hold Alt and Shift to make sure that that image, that child, stays the same size of its parent. So this image is going to be my fill. That's going to be my fill. Now let's go ahead and make the fill the same sprite. And that's going to be heart. And then I'm going to create an outline. So this one is my outline. Or I'm sorry, this one, yes, this is going to be my outline. Okay, so we have heart, background, and then we have the fill, and then we have the outline. Now the fill is actually, well, let me set the outline first. The outline is going to be the heart outline icon that I have. And let's go ahead and set the colors of these. So they're all going to start off the same color, like something like this, but I'm going to make my background a little bit darker. Okay, now watch what I do here. I'm going to click on my fill. I'm going to set this image type to filled. And then I'm going to choose, for now, I'll choose horizontal fill, and I will have the fill origin from the left. Now, whenever I change the fill amount, we can see that go back like that, and that's looking pretty nice. I'm going to keep it like that. So my colors look good. I have my heart. Now I want to go ahead and make sure that I get my heart the right size that I want it. So I'm going to say 40 by 40. Something like that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to move this up to the top left of the screen, where my health might be in my game. Okay, and let's just say we have about 5 hearts. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to quickly change the names of these. Okay, now that I've changed the names, it's starting to make a little bit more sense. And now what I want to do is actually change the position of these hearts so that they actually lay out horizontally. So I think I can just add about 50 to the X positions. Okay, so I'll add 50 to heart 2. I'll add 100 to heart 3. I'll add 150. You guys get the idea. 150 to heart 4, and 200 to the 5th heart. Okay, so now we have our 5 hearts laid out. Now what I want to go ahead and do is lay out the anchors of these hearts so that, again, we're maintaining our multi-res features. And before I forget, I want to go ahead and select all of these images. So I'm going to expand them all. This is something I forgot to do. So I'm going to click on the top heart and shift click on the bottom outline. And I want to change, I want to check this preserve aspect. So the aspect of these images will never be tainted. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and set my anchors. Okay, now that I've set my anchors on my heart, I want to go ahead and create two buttons, one for hitting the player and one for hurting the player. I'm sorry, one for hitting the player and one for healing the player. So when I click the hit button, that's going to deplete my health. When I hit the heal button, that's going to regenerate my health. So I'm going to create two buttons. So I'll right click on my canvas, go to UI button, and I'm going to size this to be 50 by 50. Okay, and then I'll make my I'll get rid of the text because we're actually going to use an icon for that image, and the name of this button will be hit button. Okay, and we'll say that the background is a red color. And I'm going to add an image to this as a child. So image, and then I will Alt Shift to make that the same size as the parent. Now my image is going to be that hit image that I brought in at the beginning of this tutorial. So I think that's this one, knockdown. And actually I'm going to come back up here and hold Shift and hit this middle button to bring my anchors back in. That way I can modify the width and the height. I want the width and the height to be a little bit smaller. And this is actually the wrong thing that I'm holding there. So I want the width and the height of this icon to be a little bit smaller so it's not touching the edges of the button. And then I'll just come back and hold Shift on this to bring the anchors back out. Okay, and anchoring is just useful for maintaining the proper size of UI elements on different screen sizes. So that's all I'm doing there. Okay, so that's going to be our hit button. I'm going to duplicate this, and actually before I duplicate it, let's go ahead and position this hit button. So we'll bring it down to about here, and then we'll say -50 on the X. Now I'll duplicate and put this button at +50 on the X, so it's next to it like that. Okay, and this is going to be my heal button, so I'll rename this to heal button. Just like that. And my image is going to be different. My image is going to be the pill. So it's like kind of like medicine. And the heal color, the heal button's color is going to be green. So something like this. Okay, so now we have our heal button and our hit button. And these are all of the UI elements that we're going to need to test this system. Okay, so we're finally getting ready to start writing some code. Let's go ahead and create some scripts that we're going to need. We'll need a script for the player that's going to maintain the player health. Then we'll need a script for, let's say, the health bar. I think that's loading. So health bar. We'll need something for health bar tester. So create C# health bar tester. So I'm just getting these code files ready so we can just stay inside the code editor until we're done with our code. And then one more C# file called rules, and rules is going to hold sort of like, it's kind of like a constant script. It's going to hold the player's health. Because the way the system is going to be set up is based on our parameters for the health bar, the player's maximum health is going to be set in the rules file, and my player is going to be able to pull its max health from that rules file. So that'll make more sense once we get into it. So what I want to do is create all of the helper classes, and then we can create the health bar script last. So we're going to start off by filling out the player, the health bar tester, and the rules scripts. And then when we build out the health bar script, it's going to make a lot more sense to us. So let's start off by creating the player script, and that's going to maintain our health. Okay, so here on our player script, I'll go ahead and start off with an empty script like this. And what we want is an integer to keep track of our health. So we'll say int health, and we'll initialize that to 0. And in start, we're going to say something like health is equal to rules.max player health. Okay, so we're going to define this parameter inside the rules script in just a second. And again, rules.max player health will be set by the health bar whenever the health bar determines based on parameters that we set from the inspector how much health the player should have. So we also need to have some public members here. So we need to be able to hit the player, and we need to be able to heal the player. So we'll have a public void for take damage. That's going to take an integer called damage. And then what we'll do is say health minus equals, so health minus equals damage. Then we will have a public void, so public void, and we can call this heal. And what we'll do is add a parameter int heal, so how much health is going to be added to the player. So we can say health plus equals heal. Okay, now we also need to be able to clamp this health value because we don't want the health to go over max health, And we also don't want the health to go below 0. So we'll create a clamp function down here. We can say void clamp health. And this, again, clamp health is going to keep the health within the allowed range. So in both of these functions that we just created, we want to make sure that we call clamp health. Okay, so we have that, and that's set up nicely. Now in clamp health, what we can do is say health equals mathf.clamp, and this is going to clamp a float value and return that for us. So the first parameter that's passed is the value that we want to check, which is health. The first parameter, or I'm sorry, the second parameter is the minimum value that is allowed, and the third parameter is the maximum value that's allowed. So the maximum value that's allowed is rules.maxPlayerHealth. Okay, now we also want to create a event, or want to create an event. So let's create an event that tells the health bar whenever our health changes, because the only place that the player's health is going to change is within this script. And that is why our health parameter is, or our health variable is private, because the only thing modifying the player's health should be happening in the player class. So what we can do is create an event so that classes that need to know the player's health can respond whenever the player's health changes. And so what we can say is public delegate void, this is how we declare our event, health bar delegate, because this will be notifying the health bar, and this health bar delegate is going to be passing the health to the player. Now don't be confused, this health parameter here doesn't need to be named the same thing as this. We could also just call it this. Parameter names are local in scope, so they aren't really being affected by anything. So I'm just going to call this health for the sake of readability. Now we also need to create the event for this delegate. So public, we can say public static event health bar delegate on health changed. And this is the function that other scripts like the health bar will subscribe to in order to receive the player's current health. So in the clamp health method, what I'll do is say on, because this is an ideal place to call this, because this is where health is finalized using this clamp method. So in the clamp health method, I'm going to say on health changed. And I'm going to pass the current health as a parameter. Okay, so that's all we need to do in the player class. Now we did mention rules.maxPlayerHealth, which we haven't defined yet. So the next logical step would be to go to the rules file and see what we need to do there. Okay, so the rules file is really only going to have a property, and that's going to be a static property. As you could see, we are just accessing the maxPlayerHealth variable using the class name and the dot operator. So that indicates that this should be a static member. So I'm going to create a static int maxPlayerHealth like this. And the reason I want to set it up this way is because I can put restrictions on the health value by using a C# property. So I'm going to create the C# property public int, or public static int maxPlayerHealth, and we'll say if we want to get this value, we just return maxPlayerHealth, and if we want to set this value, then we have some rules. So again, this is why I wanted to use the property method. And so if we set this value, we have rules. So we'll say value, which is the C# keyword. Value is going to be clamped. So value equals mathf.clamp from value. So value 0, 100. So value can never be less than 0 or greater than 100. And then we can say maxPlayerHealth after that value is clamped equals value. And that's all we need to do for the rules script. Okay, so now we want to go to our health bar tester class. The health bar tester class is going to create the public functions that our buttons need to communicate with. Remember those buttons that we created in the beginning of the tutorial, or towards the beginning of the tutorial, where we have the red hit button and the green heal button? Well, those buttons are going to be calling functions within the script. So these need to be public, and we need to have a reference to the player. So public player, and the public player is going to be set from the inspector. That's why we make that public. Now, we want to have a public function for those buttons to be able to reach. So public void heal int health, and this is within its own tester class, because normally these buttons wouldn't directly be affecting or communicating with the player class. If we go to the player class, we can see that these are public methods. And sure, we could just have the buttons try to talk to these methods directly, but the game wouldn't work like that. So we're creating this testing system. So we're going to use a separate testing class. This is just sort of a more proper way to do it, if you will. So that's the way we're going to do this. Now, since we have the player reference, we can just say player in our heal method, player.heal, and we pass health. And then we need a public tester function, public void hurt into damage. Okay, and then we can say player.take damage and pass the damage parameter to that. And that's all we need for our health bar tester class. Okay, so the next and final script that we need to create is the health bar. This is what you all came to see. And we're going to be dealing with UI elements. We're going to be dealing with those hearts that we had laid out horizontally at the beginning of the tutorial. Since we're dealing with UI elements, we need to be using Unity Engine.ui. Okay, and we're going to have an array of those hearts stored as images, so public image array, hearts, and we'll have a public int health per heart value. And we'll initialize that to something like 4. Now, what this means is that when our health depletes, we only have 4 sections of health within each heart. So health per heart, along with the length of hearts, is going to determine the max health of the player. So we're going to be setting the rules.maxPlayerHealth, and that is where the player gets the max player health from. So that is how this system is sort of working. Now, if we go to our player class, since we are setting the health in start, we're setting the max player health, so we're using max player health in start. We need to make sure that we set max player health before we call start. So a good way to do that, since we actually have to subscribe, if we go back to the player class, since we actually have to subscribe to this method or to this event, a good place to define the max player health would be in onEnable. So void onEnable is where we will set the max player health and subscribe to that event. And onDisable is where we will unsubscribe to that event. So here, this is going to look like rules.maxPlayerHealth. Max player health is going to be equal to hearts.length times health per heart. So that should make sense. And then we need to subscribe to that player event that tells us whenever the player's health changes. So player.on health changed plus equals on health changed. So we're going to create a function called on health changed. This is how you subscribe and unsubscribe to events. So by putting on health changed here on the right side of that operator, that indicates that we should have a method called on health changed within our health bar class. So we'll have void on health bar changed, which is where all of the logic is going to be happening for this health bar. And we're going to be passing int health. Remember, we're going to be using the delegate from the player class, which has an integer parameter. So that's why we need to make sure on health changed uses an integer parameter as well. So this health value is going to be the latest health of the player. So that's what we're going to be working with in here. And what we need to do is determine which heart we need to modify the fill for, and then how much the fill should be for that heart. So let's go back to Unity and see exactly what we're dealing with. Okay, so our script needs to take a look at one of these hearts. So it's going to be having a reference to each one of these hearts and the fill for those hearts. So I'll go to the 5th heart. So if our health is full, then all of our hearts should be filled, right? And if our health gets depleted a little bit, then the 5th heart, so this 5th heart should be getting depleted a little bit just like that. So again, we need to determine which heart we need to modify and what the fill amount for that heart should be. So if we decrease this, so it should go just like this, linearly from heart to heart, or sequentially from heart to heart. So that's what it should handle. So again, we need a reference to the heart and a value for the fill amount for that heart. Okay, so we're going to create an integer called heart, and we don't know what that's going to be equal to yet. And we need an integer for fill amount. So we'll call this heart fill. So how full should that heart be? And we can do a little trick here. This is where it gets a little bit interesting. So we can determine the heart just by saying health divided by health per heart. And we can determine the heart fill by saying health modulus health per heart. Okay, so what's going on here? Well, since we're using integer division, it's going to default to lower bound. And with the modulus is going to so it's going to return the remainder of division. Okay, so let's run through a little bit of a scenario here so that this makes sense and it's clear to everybody. Okay, first let's determine how much health we should have in this scenario. We have 5 hearts, and each heart has 4 health. So if you multiply the number of health points in each heart by the number of hearts, you get the max health. So 4 times 5 would be 20. So our max health in this situation is 20. Now let's say our health gets knocked down by 1. So we have 19 health. So which heart should be selected? It should be the 5th heart in our array. So if we say 19 divided by 4, integer math is always going to take the lower bound. So 19 divided by 4 is actually going to get us 4 with a remainder of 3. Okay, so for a remainder of 3, 4 is going to be the index. 4 will be this heart value. And modulus is just the remainder of the division. So that's the operation that we're doing here. So 4 would be the index of the heart, which is the 5th heart, since it's 0 base. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 would be the 5th heart. So we have the correct heart selected. 3, remainder of 3, because 4 times 4 is 16 plus 3 is 19, which is our current health. 3 would be the number of basically health points that we have for the selected heart. So our heart fill is going to be 3 out of 4, and that's what heart fill is going to get us. So again, 3 is the number of slices within the heart, and 4 is the actual selected heart that we're going to be modifying the fill for. So let's go ahead and use this and just say hearts at heart. So hearts, the image array, at the heart value, the heart index, dot fill amount should be equal to heart fill divided by float, because we don't want to get a lower bound on this because it would always default to 0. So fill amount is from a value of 0 to 1. So we want to go ahead and cast this into a float so we make sure we get a decimal value. So heart fill divided by the float cast of health per heart. That's going to actually get us, so in this situation it would be 3 divided by 4. Our fill amount should be 3/4. So that's what that means. Now this isn't going to work perfectly, but we can start to see what it's going to look like. So let's go back to Unity and see what's going on. Okay, so first we need to actually get our buttons wired up so they're actually modifying the player health. So let's go ahead and add these scripts where they need to go. I'm just going to say that the main camera is going to be the player. So we can put the player script on the main camera. And then I'll put my tester, my health bar tester, on the main canvas, health bar tester. And I'll also put my health bar on there as well. So health bar will also go on my main canvas. Okay, now let's go ahead and fill in the player value for the health bar tester. So I'll just drag the main camera on there. And then I'll go ahead and fill out my hearts in the heart array. So I'm going to have 5 hearts. And these images need to be the fill images from each one of these hearts. So I'm going to expand all of these. So the first fill should go into element 0. The second fill here, so on and so forth. So I'll just fill those in just like that. Okay, and that should be all we need to do there. Now my buttons need to be hooked up. So let's click on our hit button. I need to add an event to this on click list. So I'm going to hit that plus button, and we're actually pulling a method from the health bar tester, which is on the canvas. So I'll drag the canvas object onto here and search for that hit. So that's the hurt method right there that we created. I'll do the same thing for heal. We could see that heal method right next to that hurt one. So I'll search for that, health bar tester, and we have the heal right there. Okay, so now that I have those hooked up, I actually need to place a value in each one of these. You can see it's asking for an integer because the hurt and the heal method take integers. So the hurt is going to be by a value of 1, and the heal is also going to be by a value of 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this now to see what it's looking like. And it'll look like it's working, but when we go down, everything looks fine. But when we go back up, we don't actually get to fill our hearts completely up. So we're missing something in the code. Let's go back to the code and see what's going on. Okay, so let's think about this problem a little bit. The problem is when we go down in health, everything looks fine, but when we come back up, the heart at 3/4 full doesn't become completely full as we go on to the next heart and start filling up that heart. So let's think about this problem in terms of fractions. So we have full hearts, we have empty hearts, and we have hearts that are partially full. Now let's use an example of 16 health. So if we're going down and we have 16 health, so we have 16 health right here, we're going to choose the heart index that we want to modify, right? So 16 divided by 4 will land us on the 4th heart, which the 4th index is going to be the 5th heart. So that's going to be a little bit confusing, but just realize when I say 4th index, I'm talking about the 5th heart. So 16 divided by 4 will get us the 4th index, the 5th heart, and heart fill will be 16 modulus 4, right, which is 0. So when we're going down, it's no problem. So we choose the 5th heart, and we set that heart fill to be 0. So 16 health should be 4 full hearts and 1 empty heart. So that makes sense. That's all good. Now, when we're coming back up, there's an issue. When we go from 15 health, now think about what 15 health should be. 15 health should be 4 times 3 hearts, which is 12, plus 3 more health points, which is 3/4 on the 4th heart. So at 15 health, we have a fraction of 3 3/4. So when we go back up to 16 health, we end up with the same numbers here. 16 health is dealing with the 5th heart, and it's dealing with a heart fill of 0. So we never actually, when we're coming back up, we never actually modify the 4th heart. So the 4th heart remains at 3/4 full. So that's the problem that we're dealing with. Now this problem arises whenever heart fill is equal to 0, whenever health modulus, health per heart, is equal to 0. So that's where we want to start our condition at. We want to say if health modulus, health per heart, is equal to 0, because that's where our problem is happening. That's the only place that we have a problem. Then we want to say, okay, if heart is equal to hearts.length. That's the first thing we want to check. This indicates, if this happens, if we have health divided by health per heart is equal to 0, if that happens, that indicates full health, right? Indicates full health. Because if heart is equal to hearts.length, the hearts.length would be 5. If heart is equal to that, that would mean 20 health. 20 divided by 4 is equal to 5. So if heart is equal to 5, that indicates full health. So in this case, all we want to do is say hearts at heart minus 1, dot fill amount is equal to 1. So hearts at heart minus 1, that's the last index. So that would be hearts at the 4th index, which is the 5th heart, dot fill amount is going to be equal to 1. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'll leave these comments here. This condition indicates full health. Okay, then we also want to consider, and also actually if we reach this condition, we want to just return. So if this is true, then we can just return after we set that fill amount. Now what we want to say is, okay, if heart is greater than 0, if the heart value is greater than 0, then we have to modify 2 heart pieces, right? We have to modify 2 hearts because like I was saying, if we have 15 health, then we're at 3 3/4 hearts. And going up to 16 health, we have to modify the 4th heart and the 5th heart. We have to set the 5th heart fill to 0, and we also have to set the 4th heart's fill to 1, right? Because 16 health should be 4 hearts and 1 empty heart. So if this is true, if heart is not equal to hearts.length, but heart is greater than 0, then we need to make sure we modify 2 hearts. We need to say hearts at the heart value, the heart index, dot fill amount, should be equal to 0. So that's fine. But then we say if heart, or we should say hearts at heart minus 1, dot fill amount is equal to 1. So this heart should be full. In other words, in our 15 to 16 health example, if we're going from 15 to 16, 16 is now on the third, 16 should be putting us on the 4th index heart, so the 5th heart. So we need to say, okay, let's go back 1 heart and make sure that we're setting that fill amount to 1. So again, hopefully this is making sense. I'm going to leave a comment here. This indicates anything but 0 health where there are only whole hearts or empty hearts. So there should only be whole hearts or empty hearts right here. Okay, and then we want to say else. So otherwise, the only other condition that could be true here is that the heart value is equal to 0. So if the heart value is equal to 0 and our heart fill is equal to 0, that would indicate that we have no health left, right? So indicates 0 health. Then we just want to make sure that we're setting hearts at that heart value dot fill amount equal to 0. And then we can go ahead and return, because if we reach this condition right here, then we want to make sure that we're not setting the heart fill amount right here. So we're going to go ahead and return out of the function at this point. So I know it's a little bit confusing to think about, but hopefully that made sense. That explanation made sense. That's the best way I could explain it. Let's go back to Unity and see if this actually fixes it. We shouldn't get any errors, and we should be able to see the hearts deplete, and they should also be able to rise as we increase health with no problem. Okay, so let's just press play and see if this works. So I'll go ahead and hurt the player all the way down to 0 health. Let me pull up my console so I can actually, it won't let me pull up my console if I don't have errors. Let's go to Window and find our console. Okay, I just want to have this up to see if we reach any errors. So, okay, we depleted our health and that worked. Now let's just go ahead and heal our way up. And we're not getting any errors. So this is working perfectly. Now the rest is up to your creativity, right? Because you can choose to use as many hearts as you want. And you can also choose to fill the hearts in any way that you want. So let's go ahead and grab all of our heart fills. So we can select all of these hearts. And we can determine how these fill up. So let's say that they fill up radial 360, starting from, I think we want to start from the top. Let's go ahead and test that. Okay, we want to make this counterclockwise, so it should be filling in this direction. Okay, now hopefully I don't have to restart because of that. I don't think I do. So when we deplete our health, it looks something like this. So you can get different looks based on the fill method. Okay, so that's going to conclude this tutorial. If you guys have any other ideas for our How They Made It series, so if you have a game feature that you ran across playing your favorite game and you want to ask us how to do that, then definitely request it and we'll see about adding that to the series. But thanks for watching. I hope you learned what you came here to learn, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.